Hello, everyone. My name is Jalen Jones, digital producer here at WRAL. Welcome to the Daily Download. We're going to talk. I'm here with Sarah Kruger.
Hey,
If
everyone.
you're watching this, like, subscribe, follow for more content you're not going to get anywhere else. Today, we're going to be talking about something that everybody loves: animals, and more specifically, animal shelters. You have a story out of Pittsburgh, and we're also going to talk about just kind of overarching. More animal shelters are being fined. So, what happened in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, so there is a cat sanctuary in Pittsburgh. It's called the Goat House Refuge. It's been around more than 2 decades. It's gotten write-ups in the New York Times and local news. It's even made an appearance on the Today Show. So it's a well-known place. I regularly check state records for animal shelters as just part of what I do as an investigative reporter, always
Yes.
looking at data and documents. And so I noticed a little while ago, a few weeks ago, that the Goat House Refuge in Pittsburgh was hit with a really big fine,
Oh, wow.
$9,300.
Oh, that's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. And I check these things all the time, like I mentioned. So I have a sense of what's a big fine, what's not. And that one was large. So it got my attention. And I reached out to them, ended up talking with them. But basically, the state had found dozens of violations at this facility over the course of months. And hit them with that really big fine, and also imposed a suspension of their license, of their registration.
Oh, wow.
Gave them 30 days to rehome all of the cats that are there. That has since had a stay put on it, so they have a little bit more time. But yeah, we went out to the shelter. Happy to talk more about that, answer any questions you have.
Oh, wow. So they 30 days to rehome, and then obviously I'm interpreting that as 30 days to fix everything and then possibly bring the animals back, correct?
Yeah. So what the state's going to do is they're going to go out and do another reinspection, an unannounced reinspection, and see what kind of progress they've made. And, I talked to the owner of the Goat House Refuge. Her name is Siglinda Scarpa.
Okay.
And just really wanted to hear her perspective, because that was such a large fine. And a lot of the violations related to things like record keeping, also truthfulness.
That was my next question.
The inspector said that Siglinda Scarpa, the owner, was not always truthful with the state inspectors that went out there. So I wanted to hear from her, and I talked to her. So did my producer, Randall. And, she had a lot to say. First and foremost, she wanted people to know that the cats are well cared for, in her opinion. She mentioned, she's 85 years old. She's been doing this for a long time.
Okay.
She mentioned that she has had some health challenges recently, and that made it more difficult for her to keep up with everything at the shelter. But she said, she was hospitalized. She's out now. She is making progress. Her team is making progress toward fixing all the things that the state identified. So she is really hopeful that they'll be able to stay open, stay in business. 24 years they've been doing this, and she thinks they've had a really positive impact on the community. It's interesting when you go out there, it's definitely not your typical animal shelter. It's outdoors.
I've seen those on social media, and I love them.
Yeah. So, there's no cages, or at least cages are not regularly used. And it's, these big spaces outside for the cats to roam in. The owner is really hopeful for donations. She says, it's a tough time to be getting donations. Donations, as we've reported before, for a lot of nonprofits are just down across the board. And one thing she mentioned to me that's stayed with me was that she gets her Social Security check every month, and that half of it she puts straight back into the shelter, because she said she doesn't need a lot to live on, and she really cares for these cats. And she has, a lot of cats out there. She has a couple dogs out there, at least a couple that I saw.
Gotta guard those cats.
Yeah, I guess
Get those dogs to work.
Yeah.
So obviously she cares. And she's putting a lot of effort into it. With these violations, this is a lot of, manual labor. You got to move the cats, herd them all together, rehome them, fix these things and things like that. How difficult is it to regulate let's call this an open air kind of farm,
Mm-hmm.
sanctuary, rather than regulations for a typical animal shelter that you see here in Wake County with the cages and things like that?
Yeah, so the Animal Welfare Act that the state has, which is
Okay.
what the Department of Agriculture enforces through their animal welfare section, which is led by Dr. Patricia Norris, who I talked to for some of my stories. This is still considered a registered animal shelter, just
Okay.
as like a more traditional county shelter might be. So have to follow all the same codes, all the same laws.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can see that's difficult. So let's switch gears a little bit here. We're talking about more animal shelters just in general being
Mhm.
fined.
Mhm.
What's going on with animal shelters? I know it's more difficult. We're talking about more and more animals. You're talking about record amount of animals that
Yeah.
are in shelters right now. These fines, is it just not enough volunteers? Is it not enough hands? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, so we have done a lot of stories about struggles at different animal shelters.
And
I
we've
know
talked
you and I
about.
have sat down and talked about this as
Mhm.
well. So, one thing that I was noticing in just doing a lot of these stories, I started noticing just more and more shelters being disciplined. And oftentimes that discipline does include a fine, but doesn't necessarily have to. And so I counted it up, and in 2025, there were 22 registered animal shelters that were disciplined by the state. Compare that to 2024, there were only 7.
Okay.
So more than tripled. Yeah, and definitely caught my attention. I talked to the state animal welfare director, Dr. Norris, who I mentioned earlier, just to really ask her why. And what she told me is really a lack of resources. And I'm looking at one of her quotes here in my story. She said, "It is not lack of motivation. It is not lack of compassion." I want to be very clear about that. So, yeah, she thinks these shelters are just struggling due to lack of resources, a lot of times also newer staff who maybe don't always know all the ropes. So really kind of a call to action to the community to help these places if they can.
Yeah, that was my next question, because it's like, okay, we acknowledge the problem of resources. Does a fine solve it, or does the fine help show a paper trail to require more resources
Mm-hmm.
when they're talking about, because we're talking about these, the government run buildings, correct? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can answer that, but that was my question that I'm thinking about in
Yeah.
my head.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to speak for the state, but it's my understanding that the fine is not always necessarily paid in full. Like there's often an appeal and there's kind of a negotiation process.
Okay.
But
There's
I
ways
also,
to work.
yeah, but I also know from talking to Dr. Norris that she says if an animal suffered, there's going to be a fine, because she does have to, draw a
There has to
line
be something.
somewhere, and there has to be some enforcement and penalties to keep things running smoothly and to incentivize compliance.
Well, I totally understand that. And so is there anything else that you saw or discovered when you're looking at these animal shelters? We're talking about cats, dogs, multiple types of animals, even some exotic ones maybe out there. Is there anything that you've seen that you haven't been able to talk about on TV?
That's a good question. I mean, my stories, it is the hardest part is making my stories as short as they are.
Yes. Good thing is this is not a 3-minute package here. We can go as long as need be.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, I'm an animal lover.
We all are.
Yeah, it's hard to go into shelters and just see animals waiting for their forever homes. As nice as a shelter may be, it's not as nice as like having a nice warm bed to sleep in with a human and be up on the couch. Like, gosh, I think about my dog. He just, he runs our house. So, I think it is emotionally difficult to see these animals. And to whatever extent we can all work together to find solutions. I think, none of us wants an animal to suffer. So I really hope that we as a collective society can figure this out.
And I can imagine, maybe I don't want to speak for you, but you can imagine your fur baby in these situations, and you're like, oh man, imagine if that was my dog that I take care of, and you see them in cages or being mistreated, or just not enough hands to take care of take care of these animals and things like that. Some solutions. Let's talk about that real quick before we wrap up. Solutions, obviously volunteer, donate. Are there any other solutions besides that?
You know, a lot of animal advocates push for more spay and neuter, and either a spay and neuter law, so that's required in the state, or more funding to go toward a spay and neuter fund, which the state does have. It just doesn't have, enough money in it to meet the demand. But that way, people who cannot afford to spay or neuter their pet can find financial assistance to do so. And, a lot of animal advocates think that's the way to reduce shelter populations and really try to tackle the root of the problem.
And that's because, like, the root of the problem, there's just so many animals, period. Well,
Right.
I can't agree on that. We have a lot of animals and maybe also not enough homes. So we got to control that population as well, so everybody can get the same amount of care with the animals. So either which way, thank you so much for your time, Sarah.
Yeah,
This
of
was very
course.
insightful.
Great
We
to be
always
here.
have great conversations, and we're trying to save the animals out here.
Yes, let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So if you're watching this, like, subscribe, follow for more. And guys, you can check out all of Sarah's reporting on WRAL.com. And also I'll link some of those in the YouTube channel as well. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.